What's up, everyone, and welcome to Project XTalk, an Xbox podcast, episode number 220, presented by Save the Game Media. I'm your host, Kevin, and on today's episode, we're talking about Microsoft and Xbox getting into the AI future. We have a Game Pass update and a rumor of a new remaster on the way. Before we get to that and more, I got to introduce my co-host, rocking with me as usual, JamPackSam. How are you, my friend?
What's up, man? I'm doing phenomenal because new Tony Hawk game coming. I don't know if you heard or not, but a little new Tony Hawk game action coming. So that makes me a happy camper. So I'm very excited about that. Feeling blue today. I have the blue lights instead of the green, and we're rocking with it, man.
Yeah, we will be talking about that as we round out the show. That's our last news topic of the week. So I'm excited to chat with you about it because sounds like you might know more about the Tony Hawk than I do. But it's something I dabbled with as a kid. But yeah, I've had a busy week. This has been pretty brutal, but I have done a lot of gaming, so I'm excited to chat with you, especially about Avowed. And we'll talk more about that, obviously. So why don't we run through the housekeeping, get to what everyone is looking for here. So this is Project XTalk. We are live every Thursday right here on youtube.com/save the game media. If you can't catch us live, post every Friday morning on your favorite audio platform of choice. While you're over there, make sure to please drop us that 5-star review. And if anyone listens only on audio, all right, this is a call. We're 20 subscribers away from 1,000 on YouTube. If you could just go over to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/save the game media, click that subscribe button, get us to that 1,000 subscribers. That would be greatly appreciated. If you want to support us even further, get early audio access to all of our content and exclusive bonus content, head over to patreon.com/save the game media. Choose the tier that's right for you, like our current supporters. So thank you to Fabulous Brianna, Rick Davis, Chad, Ellerwood Parker III, Silkenet, Lee Navarro, the Xbox Expansion Pass, Dave Harp, David Hotwright, Lillian, Marcus O'Neill, Brendan Myers, Nikolai at Night, Lindsay, Brianna's mom, Brianna's brother, and Dingle Bomb. Thank you all for your support. We appreciate each and every one of you. All right. Why don't we jump right into what we've been playing? Except you have a question in the chat there, Sam. Did you score one of those 50/70s?
Oh God, no! I absolutely did not try to get a 57. Have you kept up with any of the
Uh,
graphics card stuff?
I've been seeing, I saw yesterday or the day before that Nvidia was like, all right, if you've had an account longer than like January, we're going to
Yeah.
give you like some priority access or something.
So that's a different. So I signed up for that. So right now they're going back through, and Nvidia finally set up a program where if you have an account older than January, you can sign up to get the opportunity to buy a 5080 or 5090, which is great. Cool, love that. The 5070 Ti had an embargo. It dropped today, and then the embargo for the third-party cards lifted yesterday, I believe. And they're basically like $50 cheaper than a 5080, or they're nothing basically if you get a third party card, because you can't find anything else that's like the MSRP of 750. They're all like $900. So I'm just going to put another $100 in it and get a 5080. Like, what are we doing here? So no, they're hot garbage. I'm good. And quite frankly, I'm looking at the AMD cards that are coming out in March. I think that's kind of like catching my eye a little bit more. So that's the answer to Rick's question. Absolutely not. Oh, you're muted, I think, or something's going on.
I am muted.
There you go.
All right. Ooh, I forgot I have a mute here, so I must have hit that. I don't know much about computer graphics cards, all right? But I'm an NVIDIA guy for life. That's all I know, all right? I don't trust AMD these days.
I mean, the thing is, like, realistically, I'm doing the majority of my video editing on this PC. In fact, all of the video editing on this PC, and that's mainly like 80% of what I use it for anyway. To Silkenet's question, I got a 9800X 3D last year, so like I have a really good CPU, so I'm good on that side. I just need a better GPU because I have a 3060 Ti, which is like, it's fine, it's fine, but
Makes
like,
mine look like trash.
I mean, I just have like the big monitor, so it's like there's a lot of pixels to power here,
Mhm.
Kev. Like,
Mhm.
it's not
It
working out so well.
it's like when I put the Switch on my 55-inch OLED behind me, and I'm
Something
like,
like that.
"Hot damn, this looks like trash." Because like the UI, the main menu doesn't even. I had to go in and scale it down to 95% or something. Because if you just keep it normally, it upscales it, but then it blows it outside the boundaries of the screen.
Yeah, it's more so like whenever I'm playing PC games, I try to hit the native resolution and like use DLSS and stuff. But then if you use DLSS, you lose some of the quality. So like generally, I hover around like 40 to 50 FPS in like a higher end game. and it's in like a scaled up equivalent of 1080p that uses AI to look better. So like it's good enough. It's good enough, but I want a little bit better to where like I can go up to 144 and do all of the PC gamer things that make PC gaming kind of worth it. So that's where I'm at.
Are you scared it's gonna set your computer on fire though?
I mean, I at any given time, anything in my room could really combust, quite frankly, because this is a homemade Xbox sign back here. Who knows who like put that thing together? You've got all these lights that I bought
Homemade.
100% from China. I don't know what's going on with any of this stuff. So my living room lamp's been flickering all this week, and I'm like, is it the light bulb or the wiring?
Mine,
No idea.
yo,
Yeah.
same though. I hate that when that happens. I'm a big, well, I'm not, but my fiance's a big Temu shopper. All
Ooh,
right,
risky
yeah.
moves. Risky
So
moves.
like when those tariffs start getting implemented, I was like, I don't know if you're gonna be able to shop there anymore.
Yeah, it's there's like this trend of it's really wasteful. Maybe this is like a post show topic, but all of this trash on TikTok shop combined with all this trash from Temu. And then I also have a habit of like whenever I need something new, like if I need a new desk mat or something, hit me with the $8 Amazon option. I know it's going to be trash. I know it's whatever. I just go for it. So that's a problem in and of itself.
Todd Oxtra corrected me in the chat, by the way, saying that most of the handhelds and consoles use AMD.
They do.
Listen, okay, fair point. I'm talking specifically like me buying a graphics card to put in my PC.
Yeah, and
Uh,
typically, going back to that point I was making earlier, NVIDIA is better with encoding for videos. AMD's kind of worse about that with their GPUs, but the GPUs they make are good for the mid to like higher mid budget gaming kind of side because they're supposedly going to be like 750 for the equivalent of a 4080
mm.
Super or like something 4090 or something like that. So like they've got beef to them, but they're not as good as what you're talking about with NVIDIA.
Mhm. All right, awesome, awesome. Yes, sorry, Nissa. We'll get off the nerdy PC talk. Why don't we jump into what we've been playing? You only got one thing on the list, so we'll chat about that because I've also been playing it.
Yes, I have continued to play Avowed, which has continued to be a very, very fun time for me. Now, disclosure, I did have an ad with Avowed earlier this week that I did, so that to the side. Full transparency with all of that. I love this game, man. Like, I'm having such a really
Mm.
good time with it because I've gone through and I've respec 3 times now. Like, I've just totally
Oh.
reset my skill tree. And so I've been toying around with different stuff. So I went from like a dagger slash wizard kind of build where I
Hmm.
had magic in my left and then a dagger in my right, or a grimoire, I should say, in my left and a dagger in my right. Then I went to a shield and a regular sword, and now I'm on a two-handed great sword. So like I'm just having a good time digging around in here. I'm doing all the side quests, all the bounties. Um, it is everything that I want for me in an RPG. Now, I know that that's not going to jive with everybody out there. That like, with Rick, where you're talking about Kingdom Come Deliverance, and that's like a
Hmm.
super hardcore, realistic, almost like a lifestyle simulator kind of thing. This is not that. But if you're like me and you like that compartmentalization of like just having a very clear directive and you're just kind of like living this little life you've got here in Avowed and going around doing fun stuff, I'm obsessed with it. So really, really enjoying my time with Avowed. Not a perfect game performance wise or otherwise, but very, very good game.
What mode are you playing in? Because I'm rocking the balanced because I got that 120 hertz TV, so
Mhm.
it's 40 FPS, but like they up the resolution.
I do the performance where it's
Okay.
just it's shooting for 60 all the time.
I
Yeah.
still get a few hitches here and there. It's not like most of the time very smooth, looks beautiful, but there
Yep.
is the occasional hiccup here and there.
Yeah, occasionally I'll turn my right thumbstick and I'll just be like looking around at something, and then you'll see like a 25 frames per second, 3 second window there, and I'm like, oh, what was that? And then it just goes right back to 60. So all things considered, compared to some of the releases we get, which this probably isn't the right way to think about it, but compared to some of the games that we get out there, Avowed did pretty good. I mean,
Hmm.
I feel like it's acceptable. It's pretty good.
Yeah. No, I would agree that for performance wise for me, I think this is pretty good, and I love seeing the inclusion of those the 120 hertz 40 FPS modes. Like I know PlayStation was big on that for most of their first party releases for a while, like Ratchet, Spider Man. They had all
Yep.
those, and they had ray tracing included in some of those. So glad to see Xbox dipping their toe in there, but. I did not play Avowed when we had our big discussion last week. I have now played it. I have put 9 hours into it currently. All
Okay.
right. And I want to take this in steps because I put on Blue Sky after 2.5 hours that I had some thoughts. And my thoughts after 2.5 hours were not very positive, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
I think the opening of this game is pretty bad. I think it's slow. I don't think the combat feels great when you start playing the game. Like
Mm-hmm.
it felt very MMO, like when you get and I understand people have different starting weapons, but my initial weapon was like a spear. So it felt very like
Yeah.
stab, stab. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It didn't feel great. You get the magic and like in the tutorial that feels a little better. I'm like, all right, that's cool, but I don't really want to use magic. That's not my play style in RPGs. So I was going through and I'm like, all right, I don't understand or really care about much of the story so far because they're like,
Mm-hmm.
I know they have the in-game glossary, but that's like, oh, you want me to read a whole like Wikipedia entry for like words, and I'm like, I'm just gonna try to pick it up. Um, so I wasn't like main story wasn't grabbing me. I'm just running around, exploring, doing side quests. And I'm like, this is fun, but this isn't immediately like gripping to me, is how I was feeling after those 2.5 hours. Like I compared it to Starfield, where I was immediately like, as soon as you get to New Atlantis, I was like, I'm in love with this game. Like
Yeah.
I'm going over here, go to the bank, getting weird storylines. Like I was comparing it to that, and maybe that was the wrong mindset because now, 7 hours later, I'm very much in the camp of, oh no, this is a really good game
Yeah.
because you do more side quests, you explore more, you get those unique weapons, and that is where the game starts to shine for me. Like I got an electric shock pistol, I have an axe that freezes things, I have a fire dagger and a flame sword as my alts. So like occasionally I'll just whip to my alts and hold the triggers, and I'll just start like swinging like a madman. And otherwise, I'll like freeze them or blast them. My favorite is when you're fighting in the water, and then I'll like freeze the water so they're stuck in place, and I'll shoot the
Yeah.
water with my electricity, and you just get a big area of effect shocking them all. I'm like, okay, this is awesome. This is what I was looking for from the combat. So it takes a while to get going, but once it does, the combat really does hook you in. I still think the main story pretty boring. Like every time I have to go do those quests, I'm like, all right. But I do think where the game shines for me is the side content. I'm having a lot of fun doing the side quests. Like I had no spoilers, but like I had one quest where it was like, oh, we think there's a traitor in our midst, right? And
Mm-hmm.
you had to go across the lands and like find missing people and get their sides of the story. And like it culminated in, oh, you get to make a decision. And I'm like, this is great. I want more of this because I do feel every side quest ends with like, you can handle this how you want. And that's how that's what I was hoping for, because I don't feel that in the main quest, like for most things. It's definitely a step back from Outer Worlds for me, where it's like, oh, the mayor in Outer Worlds is a dickhead. I'm just gonna kill him and we're done with that. Or they're trying to extort me in the Outer Worlds. They want me to go do something to pay for this part I need. I'm just gonna kill you and take it. That's not here. That's not what Avowed is. But I do think there are very good RPG mechanics, choice and consequence from what I've seen so far.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think for me, the main story, it's like I agree that it could be stronger or at least more directly given to me. And I think that what's interesting is it's almost got like multi tiers, multiple tiers of a story where you've got like the backstory of your, I don't want to get into spoilers or anything, but you've got like a backstory, actually what's happening, and then like this overall lore arching thing that's happening all at the same time. And you'll get different snippets of these at different points. So for me, like sitting through and really kind of soaking in all of that, I have to be in the mindset to do that. Like that's why I'm glad that I didn't rush a review and try to like grind through this entire game in a week, because it's better for me that I've taken the time to transparently. We've talked before and after the show. My sleep schedule absolutely wild. I have no idea what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
I woke up at 1:15 yesterday and I was like, I'm awake. So
1:15.
so I woke up at 1:15. I'm awake. So I played before work Avowed from like 1:15 until 6 a.m. And I was just like, it just felt really good
Mm.
to sit there and just kind of like really get into the story. And I was able to do that because it's like, I'm fresh. It's 1:15 in the morning. Let's go for it. But I really, it's grown on me a lot. And I think the gameplay delivers it in a very satisfying way to where, yeah, you've got the story and the story is what it is, but the gameplay is so satisfying that it keeps me moving forward and continuing to want to play. Um, like I'm seeking out combat opportunities just to not only get XP but also just to enjoy that combat more. I'm curious on your thoughts on the gear system and the leveling system. What do you think about that so far? Now that you're kind of getting into it.
The leveling is what I expected. This is very Obsidian. It's like a scaled back version of the Outer Worlds. There's not as many like little categories to put a point into. The skill tree basic, but it's fine. It is interesting because like when I started the game, I was like, oh, I'm going fighter or warrior or whatever it's called, right? Like I want to be the big brute. And then I tried two-handed weapons and I was like, this sucks. I hate these. These are so slow and like painful. So like again, I'm rocking one-handed weapons in most of my loadouts. So I'm going ranger and I'll like have the root ability to like freeze them in place. I got the charge. I'm like mixing and matching, trying to find my play style. So I have no problem with that. I do enjoy the skill tree. Do I wish it was a little more intricate? Sure, but it's not like taking away anything from the game for me.
Yeah, I think for me, I think that the skill tree is good enough for what it needs to do. I don't feel like there are any like monumental immediate like, oh, other than the active skills, like there isn't anything immediate where I'm like, oh, I got this big new beefy ability. Except for one where I go through and I don't know if you got this one or not because it sounds like you're playing like a fast kind of hack and slash and then the guns.
Hmm.
Um, did you do to where it ups your stun to where like if you activate it and do like the primal scream, all of your enemies take like way more stun damage and then it builds up
No.
their stun? Yeah, so there's a like I don't forget what it's called, but it's like a primal scream thing. So if you're
Hmm.
in a crowd, you can activate it and then their stun gauge builds up in like 3 hits. And then if you combine that with one of the critical hit skills, you can like critical hit 4 people in the course of like 30 seconds. It's so much fun. It's great.
Oh wow, wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do want to know, like, so upgrading my gear seems to take quite a while, right? Like I can
Mhm.
every time I go to camp, I can upgrade maybe one, two pieces of gear. Like I just was able to enchant something for the first time, and I'm in the second area, mind you. Like I'm in the second area. I've done the side quests in the first one, all the ones I found anyway. Like my map isn't fully cleared, so there might be some hidden in those little tiny things. But like anything that was in town and the areas I went to, but I'm I don't know if I'm like missing something or it's like my bag because I've been upgrading my what is it my where I can carry more
Carry
stuff.
capacity. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just like uploading that and I'm like I can carry so many things. I have so many uniques. Like it's
Yep.
just lying. And I'm like, do I put these in my stash? Do I sell them? Do I dismantle them? Like, what's the best way to do this? Like, is it worth it to dismantle it? Will that allow me to upgrade the ones I'm actually using?
So that's the weird thing that I've had to kind of come to terms with. And I see, like, I'm not a professional, like, I don't know, guides writer at IGN or anything. So I don't take my word for it. But like my thing is that you can either sell it for a pretty high dollar and then go buy gear that you want from different people around the world. Like there's one person that I found that has like a lot of two-handed weapons. There's one person that sells like grimoires and wands
Hmm.
exclusively. Um, and so you run into those, and then your uniques have a lot of value to them, or you can break them down and get the Adra, and then you can kind of upgrade your stuff so you can do it that way. But it is so against everything in my being to break
Right.
down a unique.
That's where I'm
Like
at.
it pains me actively, physically, every time that I have to do the dismantle thing so that I can get more Adra. But I finally got myself to do it to where I have to remind myself that it's like you can start a fresh game and this gear comes back. Like it's not
Mm,
like I'm just totally, dumping it out of the
deleting the
game for it.
code. Yeah.
Right. Right. So because that's what it feels like to me whenever I'm going through and deleting a unique. Um, but after I started doing that, I think it kind of pushed me to try different pieces of gear to find what I like the best, and then just go with whatever feels natural to me. And then there have been some times where I've just had to rip off the band-aid and be like, "Man, I really like this mace, but I'm just gonna have to dismantle it because I'm going all in on this." So
Hmm.
it's definitely not going to be a gear system that everybody likes, but it's something that I think has grown on me way more because we were talking last week with Sam Heaney, where I'm like, "This game is so hard. Like, why is it needlessly difficult?" And the more that I've played and the more that I've leveled and the more that I've figured out how to kind of get better gear, the less that I feel like it has that difficulty spike. So that was more of a lack of experience for me. But I was definitely curious what you thought.
Oh, I went the route of your fiance and dropped it to easy after a while. I was like, they're pushing my teeth in now. Like at the start, I was like, oh, this game's pretty easy. Like, what's going on? And then I got to a certain area. I'm like, nope, can't
Yep.
I don't know what's going on anymore. My hits aren't doing nothing. My companions are like, you got to get better weapon. I'm like, shut up, bro. Like, I
Yeah.
get it. I got, my
Yeah.
God.
There's like 2 or 3 lines that keeps coming up where Kai's like, another win, but who's counting? And then there's the you need better armor for these weapons, or like stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. So I get those two all the time.
Yeah, yeah. I was just talking to, I was playing and in a voice chat with Kyle, and he's like, if Kai yells at me one more time on your left, I'm gonna lose it. Like,
Yeah, there's
yeah.
definitely some repetition in the voice lines. For what it's worth, again, no spoilers. Really hate Marius. Just not a fan. Do not like him at all. Yeah,
he
just yeah.
he said something. I just got my third party member,
Okay.
and I I was talking to her and I was choosing dialogue options, and he kept butting in and putting like
He'll do that.
snarky comments, and I'm like, bro, nobody asked you.
Yeah.
Shut your mouth, man. Like,
Yeah,
oh my
immediately when
God.
I unlocked the third character, I was like, Marius, back to camp. Go
Same,
like
yeah.
10 to the fire. I'm good. Thank you. Now, Kai, ride or die. I'm down with Kai all day, every day, because his little gun stuff. Love that. But yeah, definitely the fourth character you unlock, I think, is the one that I'm gonna stick with for the end game, whatever that ends up looking like. But yeah, man, it's a very dynamic game in terms of the combat and the experience it delivers. And I think that right now, it's probably one of my favorite RPGs that I've played in recent memory. And keep in mind, that's not coming from someone that plays like a ton of
Mm,
RPGs of this type. But I certainly like this style of experience better than something like Skyrim because of the direction it provides you. And I feel like I always have. I know what the next thing is. I feel like I can handle the world that we're exploring right now without feeling overwhelmed.
yeah, no, and that's something appreciate that Obsidian does, because it's the same with the Outer Worlds. So I'm like, okay, the map, like when you look at the world map, it looks very large,
Yeah,
but when you're in the actual zones, I'm like, I could run that. I could run across this and so
yeah,
quick. Like it's very chill. I'm always having a good time. Like I will just accept every side quest I can find and then just go out and do them all and then
totally.
go back to town. I did notice though, when I got my third party member, when they showed up in camp, they started talking to me about a side quest that they were not there for. They're like, "Oh, I can't believe that this person." I'm like, "You weren't there for that. What are you talking about?"
Interesting. They heard it
Yeah,
from Kai. What are you talking about? They were just chilling
yeah,
at a campfire.
yeah, wild. So there are a few quirks in here. Again, not a perfect game. I'm pretty in line with the 8 out of 10. Like it's a fun time. I'm having a blast. I'm gonna keep with it. Probably roll credits. I don't know if it's like I'm not gonna 100% the game or anything like
Yeah.
that, but I can certainly understand why people were a little lower on it. And I don't know if I can get to the 10 out of 10s that I was seeing, but yeah, I think it's pretty accurate.
Yeah, I mean, after God, I don't know how many hours I put into it. I would say probably 20 hours ish, probably somewhere around there. I'd give it an 8.5 right now, is where I'm at. Just because, like, I would give it an 8, but I love the combat so much, I would give it an 8.5. Now that could vary depending on how the story ends, but yeah, I'm probably right there in line with where the reviews landed.
So we got some comments in chat about Avowed. Ghostly Guide says, I would say the gear system is my least favorite part. I don't want to pick up everything and don't want to just upgrade things randomly because I don't know if I'll keep it that long.
Yeah.
It's
I
fair.
think that what I've done is I've gone through and anytime I wipe out like a camp of bandits or whatever, I'll go through and I'll find all the gear and then I'll sell that. So like I sell off the gear that I find. If I find like a fine pistol where it's not a unique or like something
Hmm.
else, or extraordinary, I think is what the purple one's called,
Yep.
something like that. I'll sell off all that stuff or I can break it down for stuff. But it definitely can feel like a collect-a-con kind of situation of like going through finding all the stuff you can. So I get it.
Yeah. So it's funny when I'll just run back through areas I've already been and there's just X's still on the map because I just didn't bother to loot.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't care. I don't want your little mushroom caps or whatever. Like
I don't
I'm
even know what
out of
those are
here.
for, honestly. I picked them up
Aren't
though.
they food? I thought they were food. I
I
don't know.
guess I go through anytime I get absolutely tanked. I guess I'm just sitting there like eating mushrooms for 10 minutes
Yo,
where
I
I just
just I
like,
just open the menu and mash A on the consumables. Like I'm gonna eat whatever I gotta eat.
yeah, anything I got, let's go for it.
Yeah, so I'm having a good time. Looking forward to playing more Avowed. It's hitting. It's not the perfect RPG for me, but it is a very good RPG. I will say, if you like Avowed and you haven't played the Outer Worlds, I still do think the Outer Worlds is a better game.
I think I'm going back to that because this is really my first real Obsidian experience. Like I played some Fallout New Vegas back in the day, but I didn't really I played like a little bit of the Outer Worlds when it first came out, but I never really got into it at the level that I'm with Avowed. So I'll probably go back and do a little backlog exploring when the inevitable flow of stuff calms down, which is not anytime soon, but we'll get back to it eventually.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I've been playing some other stuff. So I have finally rolled credits on Donkey Kong Country Returns HD. And let me tell you, it was trials and tribulations, a lot of screaming and swearing towards the end of this game. It's nowhere near as good as Tropical Freeze. I'll say that right off the bat. It's poorly designed for co-op because the enemy's like, oh, you got to jump on this bird to jump over the lava, except only one of you can do it. So hope you have fun leaving your partner to die. I'm like, well, why didn't you make it so you could do 2 hits on the bird? And just very weird design choices in this game. The final boss is like, oh, you're gonna go to the level, and then you have to get through like an actual level to get to the boss. And then when you die, like if you get game over, you're like, oh, you're gonna restart the whole thing. And I'm like, oh my God. Very frustrating. Some of the boss fights are annoying, but overall a fun time. It's Donkey Kong. If you're looking for a challenging 2.5D platformer, you know what you're getting into. Barrels, minecarts, that kind of stuff.
Was this game on Game Boy Advance back in the day?
It was on the Wii. I know Donkey Kong Country, one of them was on the Game
Yeah,
Boy
that might be the one I'm
Advance.
thinking about. I remember I used to play one of those all the time back in the day on handheld of some kind. So if I ever get back into the Nintendo side, Donkey Kong, all those tropical freezes and stuff is definitely stuff that I got to pick up. But
Yeah,
congrats on getting through it. I'm proud
yeah,
of you.
they're brutal. They're brutal games. They can be very difficult. It was on 3DS. I stand corrected.
No, I'm thinking about Donkey Kong Country, the original. That's what I'm thinking about.
The Switch version has the Wii game and the additional 3DS levels in it, says Rick Davis. Okay, well they need to work on the balancing. It's a little difficult. The main game I've been putting time into, I played on all the consoles this week. Everybody, look at me. I got the triangle here. So The Legend of Heroes Trails Through Daybreak 2, Sam. I know you've been waiting for the latest release for me to talk to you about this. I played the first one last year when it came out. I'm 15, 16 hours into this one. I am more than halfway through it. It's not very good.
Unfortunate.
It's the first 2 chapters are pretty bad, if I'm honest. Especially, so they do this thing and I'm not a fan. They've done this in one of the Trails game where they'll split your party up and they'll be like, all right, you have Route A now and Route B. And then if you choose this one, you're only going to have certain characters available. And we're going to do a little mini story. And then you go to the other characters, do another mini story. I don't like that. I like when everyone's together, hanging out, having a good time. I want my whole cast available. So that was a negative right off the bat. But then some of the routes, I'm like, so this whole chapter is just me going to school, huh? Like that's what the chapter's about. We're school kids. Where's the JRPG? Where's the world-ending events? Like we were dealing with some stuff at the end of the last game, all right. And now I'm in science class. So yeah, the intermission chapter, phenomenal, great. They're like, oh, we got to put a story in this game. Everyone, 16 hours in, let's put some story in. So that was great. I'm excited to see where they go with the rest of it. Avowed is taking my time right now, so like I don't know if I can balance those. It might be like finish out Avowed and go back because I might be a little higher on Avowed to be honest, than I am Trails
Finally
Through
coming
Daybreak.
back to the land of the living over here. That's what I'm talking about.
So yeah, not overly impressed. I love the Trail series, but this is certainly the weakest entry that I've played.
Yeah, I it would probably be the weakest entry I played too if I really got
Mm-hmm.
into it. It is shocking though because it has an 84 on OpenCritic and 91% of critics recommend the game. So don't know
Daybreak
what's up
2
there.
does?
Oh, Daybreak 2. Oh, my bad.
Yeah, no, Daybreak 1 is phenomenal.
No, I have no idea what Daybreak 2 has. That was a great question. State of Decay 2 Daybreak.
That's
Anyways,
same game.
yeah, as always, the beauty of this show is that we have completely different taste a lot of the time that overlap on certain areas. So,
Yeah,
to you for
like
continuing
Avowed.
to live the dream.
Like Avowed. Yes, yes, yes. All right. Well, that is all That's all we've been playing 30 minutes in the show, everyone. So why don't we get into the news because we have lots to talk about. So, story number 1, Xbox has embraced the AI future. Microsoft has revealed their new Muse AI, a quote, first of its kind generative AI model that can generate a game environment based on visuals or players' controllers' actions. It understands a 3D game world and game physics and can react to how players interact with the game. They say that this will allow the model to create consistent and diverse gameplay rendered by AI, demonstrating a major step towards generative AI models that can empower game creators. Muse was developed in partnership with Xbox game studio Ninja Theory and was trained on their failed battle arena game Bleeding Edge. What a weird choice. I added the failed part. The Xbox did not call it a failed game, but it is. It's the Concord of Xbox. Xbox notes it's still early in research, but they are using Muse to develop a real-time playable AI model trained on other first-party games and see potential for this work to one day benefit both players and game creators. Phil Spencer said that it will allow them to revive nostalgic games and allow them to foster faster creative ideations. They say, quote, starting today, countless classic, or sorry, starting or stating, I can't read, yo. Quote, today, countless classic games tied to aging hardware are no longer playable by most people. Thanks to this breakthrough, we are exploring the potential for Muse to take older back catalog games from our studios and optimize them for any device. We believe this could radically change how we preserve and experience classic games in the future and make them accessible to more players. Xbox does state that they'll always put game creators first and that there is a space for traditional game development and future AI technologies to coexist, but they're leaving it up to the creative leaders as to whether or not to use AI currently. All right, Sam, that was a mouthful, especially because I jumbled it. But how are we feeling about Muse and Xbox's AI initiative?
So for me, this is where you look at it and you're like, oh yeah, Xbox is owned by Microsoft. Like this is something that Satya Nadella has been talking about heavily over the course of the past couple of years. I used to work for a big, I say a big tech company. It was like a small tech company, but AI was like all over the place, and that was whenever Chat GPT was coming around, and that whole side has started to evolve in a big way. And for me, this doesn't cause alarm in the way that they describe it. And I took a couple of days to kind of like simmer on it because the immediate reaction is I don't want AI generated games. I want
Mm-hmm.
pieces of art that humans make. But for me, this is where I can see that same development team having 10 different ideas and then leveraging different AI tools to test them out faster to see which one's going to work better. So, like, you could speed up development that way through the ideation process.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Beyond that, of course, with the back catalog making older games run on newer hardware, it kind of reminds me of like we were talking about DLSS and FSR earlier in the chat, and how AI is already being used to upscale, and like what they do right now with the backwards compatibility program, where some games can run at 60 frames per
Mm-hmm.
second because of the way the tech is built. It's like taking AI and making it do that as well. So I think that right now the way they're describing it isn't bad. Now, what I worry about is like the horrible path we go down of everyone at Ninja Theory gets laid off and they make an AI generated Bleeding Edge too. Like that is what
Oh
people are
God.
jumping to immediately. But this doesn't sound like that. Um, I do think this is one of those things where it's like it's cool to talk about it, and I'm sure that there's a need to get like developer buy-in and interest and investor buy-in and interest, but also probably would have been a much wiser move to just like not talk about it and just use it and just make games that use this technology. But Microsoft's going to talk about AI stuff, so that's kind of where I'm at with it. How are you feeling?
I have mixed feelings about the announcement. My initial reaction was, "Oh God, here we go. The AI slop is about to start."
Yeah,
But then I read it, and they're very clear that this is not just an AI. This is a tool that humans and developers will be using. It's not just Chat GPT make me a game, right?
yeah.
It's different than that. My concern comes in when you're talking about bringing old games forward to current platforms, right? And I think at face value, that sounds great. Games that have lost the source code, companies that
Mhm.
have went out of business. whatever it is, games that can no longer be played, bringing them forward sounds great. I just look at that and say, well, you could employ people to remaster and remake those, because how much do I trust an AI to capture the feel of the original game when they can they can be fed the game, right? But they'll never know what it actually feels like in a player's hands. They don't. It's a different experience. It's a human element, right? It's the
Yeah.
human element of making art in a game, and that's where I come in with it. I'm like, I would rather see remasters, remakes of those old projects, but I understand that's not going to happen for the majority of older games. So it's this weird middle place where I'm like, okay, I get it. And if this is the way we get older games that have been lost to time to come back, maybe this is the only option.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the way you described it, there still has to be a human element there because you can take it and it's like if you generated an AI image, but you wanted to add motion, which AI can kind of do that now too, but like
Mm.
specific motions, you go through and you build out the skeleton and you like move it around and you have to have that expertise to still do that. I think about what some of the stuff I do on the back end with like the video editing and thumbnail design, where previously, whenever I would have to green screen myself out and then go into Photoshop and then remove my background and stuff like
Hmm.
that, I throw all that stuff in Adobe and like they just take out my backgrounds now in
Yeah,
like
I
two
say I just go to like Adobe or
Yeah.
there's another website. I'm like, slide image, removes background.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And I mean, like back in the day, whenever I was doing this stuff, whenever I was in high school, I mean, it would take me an hour to design a thumbnail. And now I can design a thumbnail in 10 minutes, 5 minutes,
Hmm.
stuff like that. And so I think about scaling that up to the development space. And I mean, you've got stuff that's way more hardcore than that with full. I mean, I can throw a raw video file into CapCut and be like, take out all of the spaces. I want you to take out all of the ums and ands. I want you to make my eye contact 100% dialed in 24/7.
I
Like
hate I hate.
you can do so many things with it and it's incredibly impressive. Now, do I use all of those things? No. But thinking about the development side of it, you can drag and drop a lot of this stuff and then add the human touch there to speed stuff up. The question is like, at what point do developers choose to insert the human touch? Because if you just get to the finish line and then you just like put some lipstick on an AI pig and then throw it out the door, you're going to get absolutely hammered. Like people
Mhm.
are going to hate that. But if you use it to like recreate a long lost texture from 1995 that like
Yeah.
the file isn't there anymore for, and you feed it a whole bunch of AI or a whole bunch of images into the AI, then I could see value there. So I really think it comes down to how people choose to use it, and the power is kind of in the developer's hands at that point.
Yeah, this is very much a wait and see. I think we need to know like what's the first project that's going to come out that it will have utilized this, and then we can start to judge it. Whether it's like, oh, this is AI slop, or no, this still feels like a really good like man-made game. You can tell that the developers actually play tested this, because I saw a lot of concern like, oh, they're going to use the AI to play test it, and what does the AI know? Like they're not going to act like a human player will act in a game, right? So it's interesting. There's multiple perspectives to it. One thing I wanted to bring up, and I don't know how you feel about this, but when they say that this will allow them to like f- uh, f- do the creation process faster, I get it. Making games is taking too long. I see some people being like, "Oh, we're going to get lots of new games now." And I'm like, "That's not good.
Yeah.
We have too many." And I said this in our Discord and I got some pushback. There's too many games on the market for the amount of players in the gaming space, right? Like we are oversaturated. That's why you see good games come out and constantly fail. Like I'm looking at Don't Nod, like Banishers last year. They just put out that Bloom Records, Lost Rage, or
Oh
whatever.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I see that. It's like getting okay reviews, but also like I feel like that game's probably dead on arrival for most players. It's just like when you're sandwiched in between Monster Hunter, Yakuza, Avowed, it's like things constantly fall through the cracks and you're not
Yeah.
going to get your return on investment. There's too many games, not enough time for people, not enough players. So it's like you either have to increase the amount of players, which seems difficult. Like
Yeah.
we've been pretty stagnant for years, or decrease the amount of games. Increasing the amount of games, especially when people are stuck on these live service games for thousands of hours. I worry that it's going to be an issue.
Oh yeah, no, it 100% is. Did you see the Matt Piscatella interview with Kind of Funny that dropped earlier
No,
today
I
at all?
didn't.
So they're having. I'm only about 20 minutes into it. I was listening at the gym, but they had the exact same conversation where there was a giant boom. We had a ceiling of people that were playing games in 2020 and 2021 after COVID, and then it's been on a decline from there. But there was a boom of, hey, these people need content, so let's continue making more content. And now, like I think back to 2011 is a year that stands out in my mind where you had Skyrim. I think it was 2011. You
Yeah,
had
Skyrim's
Skyrim.
2011.
Yeah, you had Skyrim, you had Rage, you had Modern Warfare 3, and then there were a couple of other things back there. But like as me being however old I was at that time, those 3 games, like I throw 180 at that, I've got my whole winter full of games. Like that was the heat, that was the hotness, and I
Mm-hmm.
had everything that I needed. Um, Now, I mean, you just rattled off 5 games that came out in the past week that I would consider to be very big games. And I mean, looking for the rest of the year just for Xbox, there's tons of stuff coming. So, and maybe part of the problem is like we're adults now, and I've got, a set number of hours that I can play every week between doing the YouTube thing on the side and doing full-time job.
Mm-hmm.
But nonetheless, like, it just doesn't feel sustainable to continue funneling money into this many projects whenever the reality is like what you and Todd were saying. Todd said the same thing in the chat. Live service games are a big part of it, where you've got so many live service games that are vying for your attention at the same time the full priced $80 games are, or $70 games are. Like it just doesn't make sense because you have almost a decision paralysis kind of situation of like, what do I even play at this point? Because Game Pass just got 40 new things over the past 3 months. I have tons of time to put into Halo Infinite and Fortnite, and Call of Duty has 8 new events every 2 weeks. So, like, what do I do with this? It's just very crippling for somebody that doesn't have a lot of time to play, and that's whenever I inevitably start scrolling TikTok and just see what the doom scrolling feels like tonight. I don't know.
Yeah, people don't have the time, they don't have the money. Like these are
Yeah,
two big things, and maybe kids do, but I feel like kids, at least the nephews, nieces, I only see them playing like Minecraft. And
yeah,
to be honest, one of my fiance's nephews, big Sonic fan. The Sonic movies, he's got
interesting.
Sonic games everywhere now. And I'm like, I'm so proud that you're actually playing like games.
Yeah.
His brother over there is like, I want to play FIFA, Matt. I'm like, well, you'll get there. All right, well, we'll deal with you some other time. But good job. You're playing some games. It is a concern, and I don't know how people. I shouldn't say that. I do know how people don't think about that because they're just playing games. They don't really.
Yeah.
If the game comes out and fails, they're like most people are like, okay, whatever. It's probably a bad game. People that are talking about the industry like, well, that studio's gonna close now, right? And
Yeah.
it's a rough thing to be privy to experience. Like NetEase right this week, Marvel Rivals was like, hey,
Weird.
we made billions of dollars, you're fired.
Yeah, it's wild, man. Stuff like that's crazy to see, and it's almost like you want to live in the ignorance is bliss kind of world for a little while because we are so tuned into everything that's going on. But kind of connected that, I was having a really interesting conversation with somebody on Threads earlier today that I kind of left because it was one of those, you get into an argument on social media. And I'm like, no one's
It's
wrong
not
here,
worth
but
it.
I'm just not going to waste my time anymore. But we were talking about The Last of Us factions and all these interviews that Shu has been doing and all
Yeah.
these podcasts where he's basically like, I didn't sign an NDA. Sorry.
I didn't sign it.
Like he's just dumping a whole bunch of dirty laundry out.
What are they
And
gonna
so,
do? Fire him?
yeah, exactly. And so they were talking about The Last of Us factions and how it felt really good to play. But after Bungie came in and explained to Naughty Dog what it takes to run a live service game, Naughty Dog realized that they would have to either choose between the Intergalactic, the Heretic Prophet, and continuing on with factions. And so they went with Intergalactic, which I think was the right choice
I think most
because
would.
yeah, because no matter how much time you put into developing factions, if it doesn't have the same flow of content as any of these other big live service games that are out there, it is going to die. Like that's just the reality of it. And so somebody on Threads was talking about like put it out as a classic multiplayer game where there are no seasons, there are no additional skins
I've
or
said this
anything.
for ages. Where
Like
I would love those kinds of games to come back. Like, hey, this is probably gonna die in 4 months, but enjoy it.
See that, but that's the thing though. It's going to die. And so Sony doesn't care to put out a game that they know is going to die. I think that the bottom of what they would want from a live service game, not to get on another tangent, but the bottom of what they would want from a live service game is Helldivers 2. Like that's where it's like
For
not
sure.
overly monetized, not constantly putting out stuff. Everybody wants to be Call of Duty, where in the past month you've had Squid Game, Terminator, and TMNT as events, and that's not even like that's the weird stuff, you know. Um, so it's just really weird because the live service games have to keep people coming back, which is like an unreasonable amount of expectation to put on developers to continue churning out new content. And then you've got the single player games and the other games that aren't live service games out here trying to win people over. And then you've got your indies over here in left field where people are begging for Hollow Knight. And then it's like AI getting in the mix. It's just a conglomeration of a mess right now.
Hmm.
But like, it's also a fun mess. Like there's good
Yeah,
stuff
there's
out there.
great games. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But listen, I've long spouted my distaste for live service games, and I know I'm in the minority there, where
Yeah, me too.
I think that yeah, we've never talked. I think they actively hurt the industry in some ways. Like I think there are negatives to them, despite the amount of money they make. Because Todd brings up a good point. The TMNT skins are more expensive than a new game. That frustrates me to no end. That there are people out there complaining about a $70 game, but then they're like, "Oh, $80 for the Ninja Turtles? That's I gotta get
Yeah.
those." Like that is frustrating to hear when it's like, "Hey, you could have helped the company stay in business instead of like Epic. You know, they make billions of dollars off Fortnite." But it is what it is. All right, like not gonna get on the live service tangent, but I see Ghostly Guide said even if people do have the money, players, especially PC players, won't buy games unless they're dirt cheap. I saw a thread saying people saying 50 to 75% off prices are still too expensive.
Yeah, and I mean, I was replying to that in the chat as well, but that's the Ubisoft problem
Yep.
of coming up on Assassin's Creed Shadows, coming off of Star Wars Outlaws, all of the comments. I mean, some of the top comments that I saw when Outlaws was dropping is, "I'll wait to buy it on Black Friday when it's $40." And you can poke fun at those kind of comments all you want. Guess what? They were right. Like
Hmm.
it immediately had, they talked about it in earnings where they were like, "Yeah, we got a big Black Friday sale coming up," because people know how it works for Ubisoft specifically. Rockstar, good luck. You gotta wait 10 years for GTA 5 to be $5. But yeah, man, people are not wanting to spend cash, understandably so, and developers need more money to keep the lights on, and that's where you end up with weird situations where entire teams get shut down.
I mean, I'm kind of in that boat where, obviously saving for a wedding. So like I have a budget this year for video games,
Yep.
and Yakuza comes out tomorrow, and I love Yakuza, but I can't justify $70 when I have Avowed and Trails Through Daybreak like on the table playing them right now. I'm like, I can wait. And like Split Fiction's coming out at the beginning of March. That's a cheaper title. So like I can save some money there instead of getting Yakuza. By the time I finish getting, then we're rolling into South of Midnight, Doom. By the time I can actually get to Yakuza, like it's probably gonna be like $40, $30, right? Like
Yeah.
save it.
No, totally. I feel the same way. I mean, you know me, I love live service games. And so by the time I finally get caught up to where I don't have anything brand new to play, if that ever ends up happening, I'm going immediately back to see what's new in Call of Duty, or I'm going back to see what's new in Halo or any of these other live service games that have come out and blown up. And then that's my filler between whatever the next big thing that's coming that I want to play. Um, so yeah, I think that both of the ways that we think about games are probably the way the majority of people think about games, and we aren't just the money pits that I think that analysts would
Mhm.
hope that we are, to where we're just like, oh, Yakuza like a dragon pirate world or whatever like whatever it is. It's just like I'm not going to throw money down on every single thing the way they think we might.
Yeah, no, for sure. So that's a good live service game industry discussion coming off the AI thing. We do have a question from Sam Heaney, who was on the show last week. If you want more of him, no limits every Tuesday. He says, "Do you think the likes of Phil Spencer are actually on board with the Muse initiative? It seems very Microsoft directive. And even though Phil is talking positively about it, I feel there's an inherent contradiction for a man espousing developers and their creativity." I think Phil's just doing his job at this point, to be honest.
Yeah, I think Phil is definitely taking the direction from the top. And I forget who the interview was with, but it was like head of AI gaming initiatives or whatever the title was. So it's clearly something that Satya is pushing down and like every stage of Microsoft. I think there was we might have had a story about this a couple of months back about how Microsoft was going to have AI in every branch of the company. And so this is a example of that. And I think that it's probably a lot like whenever you're onboarding with a company and you're reading through the HR manuals and you're like, hey, you have these Muse tools if you want to use them for your game development. Here's what they do. Have at it if you want it. And that's probably the direction they'll go. My question is, Phil is pushing 60, if not 60. I forget how old he is.
Is he really?
He's getting up there. He's in like, how old is Phil Spencer? How old is Phil Spencer? Xbox. He is 57.
Wow,
So
looks pretty good for his, especially after the exercise. Looking good these days, Phil.
yeah. I mean, Phil's looking great. He's definitely since the Activision Blizzard court dates, he's definitely come a long way with his sleep schedule. So proud of you, Phil. But my question is, Phil can kind of like hold the arrows from hitting the people with AI. You know what I mean? Like he can kind of hold back the flood. Whoever comes in next, whether it be Sarah Bond or somebody else to lead Xbox as a, head of the entire operation. Well, I guess he's kind of chief of Microsoft Gaming, but you know what I mean? Like the king of the ship.
Yes.
Whoever's next in command, what's their stance on this going to be? Is it going to be like a Bobby Kotick style situation of like, I don't care, make as much AI trash as you want and then funnel it into people's wallets? Or is it going to be somebody that's like Phil, that's more respective of the medium and wants it to be more of an art kind of approach rather than a volume and income kind of approach? So that's where my head's at of like, I mean, let's say Phil retires at 65, which is, I feel like is a stretch. You're looking at one more console generation he might have in him, and then what's beyond that. Yeah, and a lot of questions like that with consoles and everything else going on. So, going to be a very weird decade coming up.
That is true. So I don't know if I listen. We can only go off what Phil's saying, right? And he's very much like, "Hey, we still believe in empowering creators. That's why we're giving the creative leads the option. Do you want to use this or not?" They're not forcing it on anyone right now. They're not saying, "Hey, all our studios need to use this." We're going. They seem to have a team or teams really looking for this kind of stuff. Like it's interesting to me that Ninja Theory of all people are like the ones that kind of worked with them on this. And I'm like, there's certainly more going on in Ninja Theory than people think. Like they're not just there to make Hellblade and like artsy games, right? Like they have a lot of technical prowess that clearly Microsoft sees value in.
Oh yeah, for sure. They're definitely leading the pack when it comes to that. I mean, we saw that with what they did with the textures and models in Hellblade 2, where it's like if they're into that, they're probably going to be interested in AI stuff. And who would have thought Bleeding Edge is in a podcast conversation in 2025? That's
I
wild.
never even played Bleeding Edge, and I never
No
will.
one did. No one did. It's fine.
Never will. Never will. Okay. All right. I think that's enough on Muse AI. Why don't we jump into the remaining smaller stories? We have the Game Pass update for the second half of February, and it is a very small update. So available right now, you can play EA Sports F1 24 on Cloud Console PC for Ultimate PC members. You can play Warhammer 40K Rogue Trader for Cloud PC and Xbox Series at all tiers. February 25th, you can play Watch Dogs Legion for Cloud Console and PC at all tiers. Any of those piquing your interest, Sam?
Not at all. No. There's literally nothing here for me. Avowed is the king there. I've heard good things about Rogue Trader, but like I'm never going to play that. So this is a very passable month.
It's funny because we were just talking like a few weeks ago about like, Warhammer has a game for like every genre, right? And then Rogue Trader pops up, and I was like, oh, should I give it a try? Fun fact: how long to beat has this main story? 63 hours.
I'm good, thank you. Appreciate it.
That's a pass for me.
I'm
like,
fine.
if that didn't work, like 12, I'd be like, all right, I'll give this a shot when I get some free time. 63, it's a Warhammer game, my guy. Like. I'm looking to smash Space Marine style, all right? Like bolt gun. I don't need to be in here.
Love the pause in that. I'm looking to smash.
I'm looking to, you know what I'm
Space
talking
Marines.
about. Yeah, Space Marines. Well, I wouldn't say no. Probably because I couldn't say no. All right. And the last story. We have a Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 and 4 remaster rumor coming via Ecstasis. Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 and 4 remaster will apparently be shadow dropped during the Xbox Summer Showcase. He says the title will arrive day one into Game Pass and be available on Steam, PlayStation 5, and the Switch 2. Supporting this rumor is pro skateboarder Tyshawn Jones, who all but confirmed he was in the game. However, just today, a tease in the latest Call of Duty map indicates that there is something coming March 4th or 3-4. Get it, Tony? 3-4?
Yeah.
So, Sam, Tony Hawk Pro Skater looks like we'll get it in a few weeks.
Yep, I'm very excited about this. Obviously, the rumor's been flying for a while. I believe the remaster for 1 and 2 did really, really well. And I love Tony Hawk, man. Like, those are the games I grew up playing. I put tons of time into Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. HD is underrated, in my opinion. Different kind of game, but I still enjoyed it. And it's just cool to see these games coming back. Soundtracks phenomenal. Cannot wait for the soundtrack to hit YouTube Music or Spotify or whatever you listen to. But yeah, man, I love Tony Hawk, so I'm excited to see more. Would love for this game to continue getting enough support for them to do this with Underground and Underground 2, and then like get that little combo going in there. Maybe American Wasteland eventually. I'm just saying, like, there's a lot of potential. We forget 5 exists, never talk about it again. But yeah, very excited. Cool to see it coming to Switch 2 as well, allegedly, if that is the case. And then of course the day one Game Pass drop is always a lovely thing to see as somebody who subscribes to it.
Yeah, it's interesting because is 1 and 2 on Game Pass yet? Like the remaster?
Great question. I don't think so.
I feel like because I'm almost wondering, like, do we get, because the rumor said this was a summer showcase, so like is March 4th the 1 and 2's the 1 and 2 package is coming to Game Pass. 3 and 4 will have more like announcing it that's coming this summer. I don't know. I think this is very interesting because Tony Hawk Pro Skater, big part of my childhood. All right. Like those soundtracks formed probably my musical tastes. All right. Like it's you get the pop punk style going on.
A little bit ska, ska music.
That and I would say Need for Speed Underground 2.
Yes.
Were the soundtracks to my childhood. I was like, oh, let's go. And then you hear them at middle school dances. I'm like, oh, we should not have been listening to this music, but
yeah, no, not at all.
This is what we're doing.
I feel like for me, it was Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, and then it was Burnout 3 had a really good soundtrack. That was like the dad rock, where it had a lot of like that kind of music.
Godsmack.
Yeah, like a lot of stuff like that. MX versus ATV.
I love those games. Those games were dope too. Yes,
yeah, a lot of really good soundtracks in that. And then it was a really, really good era. And I agree. Like that's why I have the music taste I have of the 90s and 2000s rock.
SmackDown versus Raw.
Yes.
Yep, they had Rise Against on those soundtracks like yearly, and I was like, yo, so good. Like that's oh my god, man, they don't make soundtracks like that anymore now. Like I boot up FIFA. It's a bunch of like indie pop music. I'm like, what is this trash? Like,
yeah,
what are we doing?
And I feel like we hit the perfect thing because we grew up on like everything we just talked about, the MX, the Pro Skater, the Raw, like everything we got. And then Guitar Hero comes and they're like, hey, all these songs you've been listening to for like 10 years. What if you could play them with a plastic guitar? And now we're just like immortalized with that kind of stuff. I love it.
Hell yeah. Yo, I still Rock Band. I play Rock Band yearly. Me and the friends get together. It's so good. We're gonna be a rock band, guys. We don't have the actual musical talent to play these instruments, but here we're stars. All right. Well, that's all the news for this week. So why don't we get into the listener questions to round out the show? I know there was one in the chat I was saving. It's a short one. Oh, Nissa asked me if I thought the too many games problem was why Tales of the Shire was delayed until July. Probably just needs more work. I'm not familiar with the developer, but probably just needs more work. I don't even know when it was supposed to come out. But if it was supposed to come out this month, great move. Great move.
I've never heard of this developer either. Way the Workshop? It's a board game company, apparently.
They're making a video game, huh?
Allegedly. That's probably why they need more time. They're like, wait, what, you're telling me it's a video game we're making?
they were making a board game.
I just made the dice. What do you mean?
Ghostly Guides did write in, said, should they have kept multiplayer in Avowed. Why do developers seem so reluctant to make multiplayer games nowadays that aren't survival crafting games or hero shooters? I can't be the only one that wants more co-op games.
I don't know, man. I think that I saw Mr. Matty Plays video about how you can tell Avowed had multiplayer bones in it because the cities have a lot of static NPCs, and so you were meant to add the movement into the way that you were exploring. And I thought that was a really interesting observation that I wouldn't have thought about.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I speak as somebody who rarely plays with other people, like 5 times in the past 10 years probably that I've played games with other people. And of course, like multiplayer, I'll queue up solo, but like I don't do too much hell diving or anything like that. Um, I want single player RPGs, and I feel like a lot of other people want single player RPGs. And I think that the last thing you want is to have the impression you're shoehorning multiplayer into something that doesn't need multiplayer, especially right now. Like I think that's kind of one of the tropes that the people are kind of fighting over. So I think that it's fine, and I also think that it the game has to be kind of balanced one way or the other for something like this. And I think they didn't build out a scaling system that would work for multiplayer and single player. That's just my impression of how I'm feeling with Avowed. But I hear the calls for that kind of thing because I'm not that guy. So like I respect that other people would want multiplayer. So I'm not saying you're wrong for wanting it. I'm just saying how I see it anyway.
Yeah, I like games that have an option for, like Space Marine has the op. You can play it solo, you can play it single player. I think, or multiplayer. I think there's a time and place. I would have loved to play co-op Avowed. I don't know how that would work with the current iteration of a game because, like, if you want to kill somebody at the end of a side quest and I want to like not kill them, we have conflicting options. The role playing elements kind of get a little muddy there, right? So it would have had to be a different style of game, a different kind of RPG than what it is.
Yeah, and I think that having, like, multiple characters doing all these Avowed things where you've got, like, spell casting and like, everybody is effectively, excuse me, just flogging this enemy, like, I don't think it visually would have been a good move either. That's just me, though.
I see the chat is surprised you haven't watched Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I'm just not a huge movie guy. Like, I'm well-versed
Me either.
enough, but I don't have a ton of time for that kind of thing. I've watched, Fellowship of the Ring, and I
And he
think I've
fell
seen
asleep.
I think no, I mean, it was pretty good. It was pretty good.
Uh,
I
I
might have
watched
just seen Fellowship.
it. I watched it a year ago, and it was a struggle to get through. I was like, this is a boring
I
movies."
tried reading the Lord of the Rings books back whenever I was like 10, and I was coming off of Harry Potter. Dude, do not go directly from Harry Potter to Lord of the Rings as a 10-year-old because you're going to go. It was like opening up the back of like a cracker box and reading the ingredients. Like it's just absolutely not. So
Hmm.
not a great Lord of the Rings experience.
I have fond memories with Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers game on the GameCube. That is my
Mm.
fondest Lord of the Rings memory.
Shadow of Mordor, very good game.
Never played it.
Oh, it's very good. That was the first one, right?
I think
Shadow of
so.
Mordor.
Shadow
Yeah,
of
the first one
War
was good.
was
I
the
did not.
second, or
Shadow of War was the second one. Shadow of
yeah.
Mordor I enjoyed Mordor. Did not really get into Shadow of War for some reason.
Last question comes from Chipotle Bear. Our friends over at the Nerd Chat says, just a fun question for you guys, assuming you're gonna finish Avowed fairly quickly, and then obviously jump into our lineup here in April. What would be 1 or 2 games from your backlog that you would love to finish in the lull in March, pretending you're not playing Monster Hunter or previewing another game?
Ooh, tough question. I think Stalker 2 is one that Rick called out in the chat earlier. I would want to go back and finish Stalker 2. Another one that I keep wanting to go back to and like dabble in more is Star Wars Outlaws to see what the update brought. But beyond that, brand new net new game, go back and play Avatar. I own it. I have it. I just never got around to playing Frontiers of Pandora. So I would go Stalker 2 and Avatar Frontiers of Pandora.
I don't know what lol Chipotle Bear's talking about. Like, I'm Split Fiction is coming out in March. So there's
I mean,
no
Shadows. I'm going to be playing Assassin's
that
Creed
also
Shadows.
Assassin's Creed Shadows for people.
Yeah.
There's not a lull in March for me. So I'm pretty set for games until June. Like, I think that's when there's nothing on my release calendar.
Yeah, and then Hollow Knight Silk Song's shadow dropping day one on Game Pass.
Yep, and we're
Yeah,
gonna get a 98 for our fantasy critic.
yeah, absolutely. So I
Mhm.
mean that's coming too. So really, July is what you got to get down to.
Well, I'm not playing Holiday Soul Salt. Let's make that very clear. I didn't play the first one. I will not play this one. But All right, that is it for the show today. Everyone, thank you for hanging out with us. Soaking it. Love you. Please don't, we have Lord of the Rings fans here, all right? Just because they're not in the room with us doesn't mean they don't exist,
Are the Lord of the Rings fans in the room with us right now?
No, no, they're not. But that it will do it. Sam, thanks for hanging out with me as always. Can you let everyone know where they can find you and your wonderful content, my friend?
Yeah, you can find me at JamPackSam on Threads, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, all those fun places. A lot of good stuff coming. Been very busy, but shout out to organization and getting up at 1:45 in the morning or 1:15 in the morning. We're just gonna keep on rolling because life's crazy, but it's very, very fun time. And of course, you can find me here as well. You know that.
I gotta ask you about that. That's psychotic behavior, my friend. You can find me at the Muffin Mon everywhere, mainly Blue Sky. It's a 1 to 7 I, O and 7A. Follow us at Save the Game Media over on Blue Sky. Stay up to date with all of our latest content. Until next week, we'll see you. Goodbye.